All right. Time to dive into a topic that's got a lot more to it than meets the eye, training heavyweights.
That's right. And we're lucky enough to be working with some incredible material today.
We are. We're going deep with insights from trainer and coach Arnaud Veere. This booklet, Training a Heavyweight, is like his playbook, packed with years of experience.
And it's fascinating. It doesn't just cover the obvious stuff. We're talking nuances, the things that most people wouldn't even think about when it comes to heavier athletes.
Like what? Give us a teaser. What's something that surprised you?
Honestly, finding out that even equestrian sports consider weight classes was pretty wild.
Whoa, really? Never would have thought of that. See, this is why I love these deep dives. Always learning something new. But okay, before we get ahead of ourselves, let's define heavyweight. Sounds obvious, but I'm guessing it's not as simple as it seems.
You're right on the money there. One of the first things Veere points out is how the definition actually changes from sport to sport.
Makes sense when you think about it.
Right. Like in boxing, you hit that 200-pound mark, you're considered heavyweight. But then you've got judo, where the categories are in kilograms, over 100 for men and 78 for women, I think it was. Totally different ways to classify it.
It's like comparing a Great Dane to a Chihuahua. Yeah, they're both dogs, but you wouldn't train them the same way. So how does that difference in size actually play into the training itself? What makes it unique for heavyweights?
Think of it like this. Everything gets amplified.
Amplified? How so?
Well, for starters, their energy expenditure, way higher. You know how some people are always joking about having a fast metabolism, eating like a bird and not gaining weight?
Yeah, the struggle is real for some.
Well, imagine the opposite. These athletes, they need a huge amount of fuel just to function.
Okay, so their grocery bills must be insane. But seriously, how much are we talking? Are we talking, like, constant eating throughout the day?
Veere doesn't get into specific calorie counts, but he makes this really good analogy. He says, imagine a car engine. A bigger engine needs more fuel to run, right?
Makes sense.
It's the same with the human body. These athletes are working with a larger engine, so to speak. Yeah. So we're talking carefully planned meals, maybe even supplements, just to keep up with their energy demands.
Wow. Okay, that's intense. And speaking of intense, what about the wear and tear on their bodies? I imagine the risk of injury must be a big concern, right?
Huge. The booklet stresses the importance of protecting joints, especially knees and lower back.
Right. Got to think long term.
Exactly. It's not just about lifting heavier. It's about lifting smarter. Even the gear they use, like in combat sports, has to be decent. It's built for heavier impact. Totally different ballgame when it comes to safety.
Makes you realize how much thought goes into it. But here's the question that always pops into my head. When it comes to heavyweights, is it all about raw power? Or is speed just as important? It's that age-old question, what wins in a fight, a lion or a tiger?
Funny you should mention that. Veere actually uses boxing as an example. He says a powerful punch is useless if you can't land it because you're too slow. It's not about turning a heavyweight into, like, a ballerina.
Right, because no one wants to see that.
Exactly. But it is about finding that balance between power and agility.
Okay, so there's more nuance to it than just brute force.
Yeah.
Now, this next part really surprised me. The booklet actually spends a good chunk of time on the mental side of being a heavyweight. I'll admit, that's something I never really considered before.
Right. It often gets overlooked.
It does.
Imagine the kind of pressure these athletes face. Just the sheer expectation of dominance based purely on their size. That can be a heavy burden, literally and figuratively.
That's such a good point. It's like people assume that because you're physically strong, you must be mentally invincible too, and that's just not how it works.
Exactly. And Veere gets into the unique challenges, the pressure to live up to these expectations, the potential for self-doubt if they're not performing at their peak. It's this whole other layer of coaching, something that goes way beyond just the physical training.
Makes you think about how often we do that in everyday life, judging people based solely on their appearance without really considering what's going on beneath the surface.
All the time.
And this is just scratching the surface. So let's get into the specifics. What kind of training program does Veere recommend for someone in this category?
He's all about those compound movements, you know, the big ones. Squats, deadlifts, the heavy hitters.
Yeah.
Literally.
Yeah. Those are the ones you always see those massive weightlifters doing at the Olympics. But wouldn't those put even more stress on their joints? Especially for a heavyweight.
That's where the real expertise comes in. It's not just about going all out with the heaviest weights right away. Veere talks a lot about modifications.
Yeah.
So like instead of a full depth squat right off the bat, maybe a heavyweight starts with a wall squat, you know, to build that proper form first.
So it's about working smarter, not just harder, like with most things in life.
Exactly. Progressive overload is what he calls it. You basically increase the demand on the body, but you do it gradually.
I see. So you're not just like throwing them into the deep end.
Right. It could be adding a bit more weight each time, increasing those reps, or maybe shortening those rest periods between sets.
Okay. Got to keep the body guessing. But how do you make sure you're preventing those overuse injuries we were talking about, especially with all that extra weight involved?
Veere stresses listening to your body constantly, like really tuning in.
Makes sense.
He even dedicates a whole section to injury prevention, specifically for heavyweights. Knee injuries, lower back pain, that kind of thing can sideline you faster than
Than a bad plate of nachos.
Exactly. Maybe worse.
Ouch. Nobody wants that. So rest and recovery are key then.
Non-negotiable, really. And here's the thing. Heavyweights, they might actually need more downtime than other athletes.
Interesting.
It makes sense, right? Their bodies are working overtime, so that recovery time, that's crucial. Train like a beast, recover like a king.
I like that. So we've talked strength training, but what about cardio? Is that even possible when you're carrying that much extra weight?
It's not just possible, it's essential. Cardio is important for everyone, but for a heavyweight, it might look a little different.
How so?
Veere recommends activities that are a bit easier on the joints, like swimming, cycling, maybe rowing.
Okay, so less pounding the pavement, more gliding through water.
You got it. He's also a big fan of interval training, those short bursts of high intensity followed by rest or lower intensity. So think sprints with walking in between, not necessarily miles upon miles of jogging.
Interesting. It's really about finding what works for your body type and your fitness level. Now, let's circle back to the mental side of things for a bit. We talked about those pressures, those expectations, but what are some practical techniques these athletes can use to kind of stay mentally strong to handle all of that?
Self-reflection is a big one for Veere.
Okay. How so?
He encourages athletes to really take stock of their progress, to celebrate those wins, even the small ones.
Love that.
And identify areas where they want to improve. It's about staying connected to their why are they doing this in the first place?
Yeah, because let's be real, training is tough. No matter what size you are, you need that inner drive to keep going.
Absolutely. Having a solid support system is key too. Coaches, trainers, friends, family, people who cheer them on.
Speaking of support systems, let's talk about a bit of a sensitive subject. Weight loss. It's kind of a loaded topic, especially these days.
For sure. And it's one that Veere handles really well, I think. He doesn't present weight loss as the be-all, end-all goal.
Really? I always thought that was like the ultimate goal for a lot of athletes.
It seems that way, right. But he sees it more as a potential byproduct of the training, not the main event. He's all about optimizing the body for peak performance, not just squeezing into a certain weight class.
So it's more about health and how you perform, not just the number on the scale.
Exactly.
I like that approach. What about training female heavyweights? Are there any key differences compared to men?
Absolutely. And Veere approaches this with so much respect. He acknowledges the obvious. Men and women were built differently. Different muscle mass, different hormonal profiles, even the way we store fat.
So one size doesn't fit all, literally. How does he suggest tailoring the training then?
Well, he points out that women might benefit from higher repetitions in their strength training. And being mindful of their nutrition, especially around their menstrual cycles, is super important. It's all about working with their physiology, not against it.
It's like you said before, understanding those individual needs and then tailoring the approach. But it's not just about the physical differences, is it?
You're right. Veere also talks about some of the unique pressures female athletes face, especially in a field where strength and size are put on such a pedestal. They might have to deal with stereotypes or expectations that men don't necessarily encounter.
It's like they're battling on two fronts. They've got the physical demands of the sport, and then these societal expectations on top of that.
Exactly. It's a lot. And that's why he emphasizes open communication so much.
Yeah.
That and a super supportive training environment where everyone feels empowered. Now, going back to that idea of the coach as a psychologist.
Yeah, that really stuck with me. Tell me more about that. It's like they need some kind of sixth sense for what those athletes are going through, don't you think?
It's true. There's this one example Veere gives that really stuck with me. He talked about how even a lightweight coach can be incredibly effective at training a heavyweight.
Really?
Yeah. He said it's not about matching their size or strength. It's about connecting with them on a deeper level. Really seeing the person, not just the physique.
That's powerful. And it makes you think about how often we do that without even realizing it, making assumptions about people based purely on
All
appearance.
the time. And that's something that really resonated with me about Veere's whole approach. He's big on empathy.
I noticed that
It's
too.
refreshing, especially in a field that can be so focused on, pushing those physical limits. He really emphasizes that there's a whole human being in there with their own motivations and, yeah, their own vulnerabilities.
Totally. And this isn't some rookie coach either. This is someone who's at the top of his game, yet he's still all about that continuous learning, always seeking out new knowledge.
He embodies that growth mindset,
Yeah.
And he seems to encourage that in everyone around him. It's never, I know everything. It's always, let's keep exploring and getting better together.
That's got to be so motivating for those athletes. Right.
Okay, so to kind of bring this all together, it seems like training a heavyweight, it's about so much more than just, loading up that barbell. It's about individual needs, the mental game, that support system, and recognizing the whole person.
It's about pushing those limits, but respecting those boundaries at the same time.
Yeah.
And remembering that even the strongest athletes, they're human.
Beautifully said. Well, folks, we've reached the end of our heavyweight training deep dive today. We went from defining what heavyweight even means to really unpacking those mental and physical demands these athletes face.
And how those insights can actually change the way we see and interact with everyone, no matter their size or their strength, in our everyday lives.
So true. And that's the beauty of these deep dives, isn't it? Taking this knowledge out into the world and applying it to our own lives.
Absolutely. So next time you see a heavyweight athlete, you'll have a whole new level of appreciation for what goes into their training, both on and off the field.
And maybe, just maybe, it might inspire you to challenge some of your own assumptions, Look a little deeper.
Couldn't have said it better myself. For those of you who want to keep exploring this topic, be sure to check out Arnaud van der Veere's work. And until next time, keep learning, keep questioning, and remember, true strength, it comes in all shapes and sizes.